I wanted to add this disclaimer that I'm clearly not speaking on behalf of ERC. These are my personal observations, opinions, conclusions. So that's what they're. I don't want to claim that this is in any way the success story or the right thing to do. This is just what I have experienced and what I have seen being there from, or having been there from all the different sides. So this was already mentioned by Mireia. I did have to try twice to get the first consolidator. So I've been interviewing in person here in the building 3 times for the so up until 2017, and then with the last consolidator, I had the interview online. So I've really seen all the different options. I have been doing ad hoc review in the past for different kinds of programs, but then now I'm in LS7. So these are just some general do's and don'ts, but again, they're from my personal experience. I would say that when you submit a grant, choosing your panel wisely is something that is very important. And I apologize if I'm repeating things because I wasn't here, because I was in the interviews. There is always somebody maybe that you know, or somebody in your field that you know and that has a grant. You can talk to them about what their experiences are with their panels. I did the same, and that is why I chose PE8. I am not entirely convinced that if I would submit the same grant to LS7 that I would actually make it, not even to the interview stage, not because the science is harder in LS7 or to pass it, but simply because there's a different audience and they have a different perspective on things, and they might have more a different perspective on expectations for CVs and what they're used to seeing. So if you are choosing your panel wisely, then also make sure that what you submit and what are the things that are judged on, like the abstract, like the keywords, make sure that they fit the panel of your choice. Don't start including, just for the sake of it, other keywords because it sounds like it's a cool thing to do. If it's not really super relevant for your project, just don't do it. If you are really targeting a specific panel, so don't add a secondary panel just because you think it might give you an extra advantage, especially in panels where there is already a lot of subscription, like LS7. Then you risk being moved to another panel. In any case, you have to explain things very clearly, because even if you are in the panel of your choice, there will be a lot of people that are not experts in your domain or your application. So they will look at your grant as a generalist reviewer. And that is possibly the only review that you get in stage B1. So the actual experts actually, or the external experts only come in B2. So you need to explain both the science and your CV to that non-specialist audience. And then just a little tiny observation: if you take an acronym that is impossible to pronounce, it's just not, it doesn't stick in people's brains as well as when you have a cool acronym, but that's completely on the side, of course. For the science, don't spend 5 pages on the introduction to the literature. Of course, you need to cite all the relevant things, but be very succinct and make sure that you in a very targeted manner move towards what is your hypothesis or what is the aim of your project. If you have preliminary evidence, please include it because it's important, probably more so for the life sciences than in the others. But if you have it, it just can only strengthen your claims. Make sure that, and we're talking about B1 here, that you include methodological details, even though the full methodology is only coming in stage 2, but people still want to feel, we need to judge also on the scientific approach. And then you always want to see something about the methodology. How is this candidate going to do that without going into too much detail, but make sure that they have something that gives them an idea of how you're going to approach it. Risk and mitigations also in stage 1 are very important because it immediately shows that you have thought about this. Don't keep it only for B2, include it in B1. Also include feasibility aspects. It has been said the institution and your research environment are not factors that are evaluated, but you need to show why it is feasible to do what you do. And it doesn't depend on your research institution. There are a lot of ways you can show feasibility. So don't spend too much time on this. Don't refer to B2 for any of the methods or for all of the methods. And don't refer to other people for all new developments. Of course, you can do that if you are expert in a certain number of things and you want to include new things. You cannot be an expert there, and of course, you need to refer to people to show that you will have the capacity or the collaborations that are needed to actually meet the objectives that you put for yourself. But it cannot be that the entirety of all the cool things of your grant are done by other people and that you're just there as the manager of all these people. So for B2, I have followed always the same outline, and that is state of the art and objectives. So starting with state of the art project, the general aim, the specific objectives, where I've always included an overview figure, project strengths and scope. And then I went into the methodology with an overview figure of the different work packages and how they relate to one another. And then for each and every work package, I did what you see here on the right. I have a work package with objectives, deliverables, then the methodology, and then the risk and mitigation section. Then I included project planning to show that I know roughly how in the time this is distributed, additional feasibility aspects, and then comments on innovation, expected impact, and foundational character. So I really tried to give, as an applicant, reviewers the things that they were that they had to score me on and that they were looking for in the grant. Now, for B1, actually, I saw there was a question whether you should write first B1, B2, and I haven't heard the answer because it was too late. But for me, I write B2 simply because I find it easiest. I was taught in the beginning to not do that you had to start with B1. I just cannot do it. So I write B2. I spent all the time on B2, and then literally in 1 hour, I trim it down to the B1 proposal. Once B2 is completely done, I shorten the state of the art, make sure that the general aim of the project is included at the bottom of page 1 already, shorten the specific objectives to bullet points with a smaller version of the overview figure. And then for the methodology, I basically copy paste everything, but I leave out the deliverables and the methodology, just the objectives where I already indicate what type of methodologies will be used, and the risk and mitigation section. Then a shorter version of the feasibility aspects and innovation impact and foundational character. But this literally is trimmed down in 1 hour. And this gives the full flavor of the grant, in my opinion, and the best ones that we've seen so far. If you don't have risk and mitigation in your B1, people will comment on it. If you don't have methodologies, people will comment on it. So I feel that what I did here was actually working quite well, and it's not my invention, because this overview actually came from a grant that I had seen before I did my starting grant that I had gotten from a colleague who was in African river research, so something completely different, but he managed to make me understand the grant. So I thought, okay, if he can do that, then maybe I can do that with other people. And other people have been using the same structure since, so it seems to be containing some good elements there. For your CV in stage 1, I really strongly suggest including all the measures of impact. So we indeed cannot look at HN or at the impact factor of journals. Of course, people know which are good journals and which are lesser journals. So people cannot unlearn these things, but people are being accustomed now more and more to also seeing other measures of impact. So if your article has been highlighted somewhere, if you have a lot of citations, if you have a lot of uptake on social media or somewhere else, just include all of those ways that have been able to make an impact. Include also all your leadership potential demonstrators, so membership of scientific societies, international or institutional commitments, all of those things that can help people understand, okay, maybe you don't have a PI position yet, but this PI is active in the international society and it's taking on the mentoring program. So all of those things can also help to give a flavor of that this person is ready to become a future leader. And then there is a free text part. I don't know exactly what is going to happen. I thought that there might be some changes, but as long as there is that, where you can explain your CV, use that to explain it to non-specialists. For instance, when I give my 5 publications or 10 publications, I always have a little bit of an explanation for the reviewer that I put in italics, where I say, look, in my field, it typically takes up to 3 years to start generating citations. And the average impact factor of my field is between, okay, when we could still do that, between this and this, so that they can better place my achievements in that context. I also included always a 10 things I'm most proud of list in the first bit of the CV already, because it allows you to highlight some of the things that make the panel get to know you a little bit better, so that it becomes a bit more personal rather than just the list of achievements that you have. So things like maybe if you have done a stand-up science, or you've done some other cool things in science communication or outreach, those are things that you can also include there. So don't just simply list your publications or your abstracts without explanation. It just gives a very poor impression, and you're selling yourself short, because if you're not even trying to explain why things are important, then why should we go and do the extra effort of reading these things and trying to understand ourselves? Inconsistencies, of course, in numbers of publications, it only raises questions, or overselling your involvement in joint studies. You have to be fair. It's perfectly normal to have multiple first authors or multiple senior authors, but don't try to act as if when you're the second shared author that you have done everything, because then there's something that wasn't really right. For the interview, you have to be short and to the point. Of course, you can practice with your group, or your colleagues, anyone, until you really feel comfortable. Also, your answers short and to the point, because you have limited amount of time, you want to convey a lot. But speaking more doesn't necessarily mean that the panel gets a better impression. And answer to the truth. If you don't know something, you don't know something, and just don't make something up. Don't spend too much time explaining your CV, but do include a little bit of why you are the best person for this project. It can be done in multiple ways. Doesn't need to be a separate slide, but of course it can be. Don't have too many things on the slide. And I think with the interviews now online, you don't get to see the room, but the rooms are not so wide and they're long. So TV screens are used for the people furthest in the back, but that means that you don't have a screen that is super huge. So don't cram your slide with too many small font things, because they might not come across very well. Don't think you can dazzle a panel with QBS, quality bullshit, because you're not the only person that we're seeing. Don't deliver a very slick sales pitch, because as soon as we then detect a hole in your reasoning, I mean, that's then yeah, you're creating problems for yourself. What you have to convey is that you're really passionate about your research topic, because if you're not passionate, then again, why should we be passionate about you? And it just showing that you care really gives a very good atmosphere to start off the internal panel discussion after that. And then to conclude, I would say that writing an ERC really never is a lost effort, because even if you don't get it, you still get reviews. In the first round, you get up to 4 reviews from panel members, but then in the second round, you get anywhere between 6 and 11 reviews from also external people that even though they might be very contradictory, they still give a very good lead as to how you can improve your proposal, so that all of the people that might read it in the next time can actually understand it. So with that, that's the main message that I wanted to give today.
Thank you very much, Liesbet. I just took note of some questions that were raised, and the one was how important is to express a research hypothesis in an ERC Consolidator grant proposal. And the person highlights that her field is SSH, not LS though.
Well, my proposals all went into PE, and they didn't have a real hypothesis. They were aims driven. So I always wanted to make it very simple, using or developing enabling technologies for skeletal tissue engineering applications or osteoarthritis. So this was more of an aim rather than really a hypothesis. And that's how I explained it. I mean, if in your field, anybody you ask would expect to see hypothesis-driven research, then you might want to try and do that. I don't know the SSH field well enough to see that, but I noticed, for instance, in life sciences that there are projects, especially in LS7, that are more kind of large screening or epidemiology studies that don't always have a very strong hypothesis, but they're more there to understand what is going on. That passes, but then you always have reviewers that will say there's no hypothesis here. So it really depends, I think, on what your field is used to seeing.
Okay, and another question was indeed regarding the overview figure. So can you give more detail on how your overview figure looked like? What's crucial to include in such a figure?
Well, maybe it's a personal thing, but I cannot start writing. I first come up with an acronym and a title. That's just the way my brain works. I mean, that's different for everybody, has their own quirks. And then I need to see this visually in a figure, how it all fits together and what the flow is. So and then I use this figure in the interview to explain how the grant works. Yeah, and so for me, that's the way I do it. You don't really necessarily have to have a figure, but more and more grants do have a nice visual representation of some elements of the grant. So you can have different work packages represented, but again, that's also not necessary, or you can have the different concepts well laid out. It really depends on how you feel it's easiest to illustrate your proposal, but I would not go for 14 pages of plain text, because it just, reviewers are reading this not during the day, but usually during the night, because they don't block slots in their agenda to do this. So you want to make it easy and pleasant for them, and then figures can help really a lot to better visualize the project.